Welcome to the Bring Your Product Idea to Life podcast. This is the podcast for you if you're getting started selling products or if you'd like to create your own product to sell. I'm Vicky Weinberg, a product creation coach and Amazon expert. Every week, I share friendly, practical advice as well as inspirational stories from small businesses. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to Bring Your Product Idea to Life. Today I'm speaking with Simon Pryce all about websites for your product business. So if you're an SME that sells direct to consumers or B2B, Simon can help make that process as efficient as possible. Simon is a Shopify partner with specific expertise in systems integration, and his team can help reduce time in admin, accounting, stock, fulfillment, orders and product management. He can reduce task duplication and errors, increase efficiency and help you with your profits. So I invited Simon on today to talk about websites and how we can make sure that our websites really work for us. This was a really great conversation and Simon has so many practical tips for you. We also, right at the end of the conversation, started talking about AI and the role of GPTs in shopping. And this was something that was absolutely new to me. You'll hear that it blew my mind a little bit. And I'd be really interested to hear what you thought of that last part of the conversation. And in fact, it's a subject that I may invite Simon back on to talk about in more detail because I feel like we could have gone into so much more depth. But for now, enjoy this conversation with Simon. So hi, Simon. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Vicky.
Can we please start by you giving an introduction to yourself, your business and what you do?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. My name's Simon Pryce. I'm the MD of Skylight Media. And what I do, I just put it simply, I'm a problem solver. I don't think there's any client that comes to us that doesn't have a problem to solve. But actually what that problem is often based around is the web. It's most often e-commerce, and e-commerce fits into the business-to-business space most often as well. We work, the majority of the work that we do is in the business-to-business e-commerce area for a very wide range of client types and sizes. So what we do is we help fill in the knowledge gaps and also do a lot of the work to help them to exploit their business opportunities better through the right use of technology and how that technology can then become efficient technology and not just having something that can take orders, but can actually then process those orders without impacting too much on the internal team.
Brilliant, thank you. You're definitely the right person to have here because what I want to talk about today is websites. So No. Oh, you are definitely the person to speak to. So let's start off, Simon. I'd love to know your thoughts on the role of a website for a product business, especially when there are so many other platforms and channels and ways of selling our products now. You know, whether that's on someone else's marketplace, whether that's wholesale. There are lots of ways an e-commerce brand can sell. What do you see the role of the website?
Well, right. Okay. Well, the role, I always see the role of a website is actually the window on a business. But actually, when it comes to products, well, it's the demonstration. It's the ability to demonstrate products where they can be accessed at any time, regardless of weather and economy, and also the ability for people to travel. You know. So the most important thing really is that you have a clear view of what it is a business is selling. Now, I suppose the vital part of the role that website plays is actually it's a blank canvas really until you put products on it, and often I can come to this later, but often it's actually about how you present things. So you're using that website as your salesperson, and that salesperson should be invested in. It should be trained. It should be adapted, and it should learn. And you should learn to actually adapt and evolve along with how the market works as well. So you don't just set up a whole load of products and leave it. You constantly look at it. You constantly monitor it. So you have to almost treat it as a human being in many ways. Coming into AI, that that is becoming more possible. But it's the role it plays really is doing the job that a human could do if they had all the time in the world, but using it to actually demonstrate. That is my the primary function, I believe.
Brilliant, thank you. And you mentioned that we can talk a bit earlier about some of the ways that we can sort of use our websites effectively to sell. So before we move on to that, Simon, I'd love to know, are there any common mistakes you see businesses making on their websites? Because that might be a good place to start, and then we can talk about the things that we should
Yeah,
be doing.
yeah, often common mistakes. And if you take the design and styling out of it, because that is relatively easy to adapt, it's actually the common ones are presentation. It's how a product looks. If someone's supposed to buy something, then how it looks within the environment it's sat in is vital, but also how it is described and explained. You might think it's very straightforward that to have a greeting card on there with a code on it and just showing the front face of the card is enough, let's say, if you were selling greeting cards. But the reality is that the product's required to do more than that, that it needs to contain more information because of the nature of not only human beings, but machine systems are accessing the information. And if you're expecting to be found on a search engine, or increasingly now through an agent, through an AI agent, there you need to make sure that the content within the website is up to scratch and explains and describes what that product is. If it's got a code and an image, well, an AI agent may be able to view that image and may be able to interpret it. A human being can see what's on it, but they want to see what's around the back. They want to see what's on the inside. They want to know in descriptive terms what the product is, the title of it. You can't miss out on those things. So it becomes detail. That is the really important aspect. And I see this time and time again, where there's just not enough put into describing a product. And you might think you've got you've got 150 products that all are pretty much the same. Well, if they're all pretty much the same, what's the point in selling them? So they have to be differentiated. But I do hear from people that they don't want to have the additional work of having to write all that content. But I'm afraid you've got to. If you want to play with the rules these days, or play alongside the rules these days, you have to be able to feed the visitor, whether that is a robot or a human being. So there's a big part. Photography, quality of images is vital as well, and that should be something that is consistent. And the consistency of image actually has a subconscious effect on the visitor, which is where there's the consistency and quality of image actually means a consistency of quality, no doubt, within the business. That detail is being watched, detail is being monitored, and it's carefully looked after. So careful. What's the word I'm looking for? Careful stewardship of your content and of your images is just as important as getting the descriptions right. So those are the two things that I spot. The rest of it, really, it comes down to how simple things are to buy, simple they are to put into basket, and how everything should be as intuitive as possible. And these days, with some of the platforms, particularly platforms like Shopify, it is science driven. The whole process within there is actually designed through millions and millions of transaction statistics to determine how best to make a product able to be purchased. That is beyond the adding to basket side of things. So as long as the checkout process is straightforward, and it should be these days, it's what you can do to get that product actually up to the standard required to enable it to actually end up in the basket.
That makes a lot of sense, thank you. And I agree with you that I think images and text online are what really sells your product. And we talk about quality of images, but what about quantity? The reason I ask this is one of my biggest bugbears. If I look at something online
Yeah.
and there's only one image, I'm
Oh, yeah,
immediately put
absolutely.
off because it depends what you're buying. Because
Yeah.
sometimes I think I don't want to just see the flat lay. I
That's
might want
right.
to see what it looks like from
Yeah, and
behind, or if it's clothes, I might want to see what it looks like on
absolutely,
somebody.
and I alluded to that earlier on in that question. That just seeing a front, let's say, of a card just isn't enough. You need to see what's going on, if there's anything inside. That is, it might be blank. But people do expect more. What they want to have is their questions answered, so they don't have to. Oh,
Mm.
okay, right. I'm not entirely sure about this. I'm going to have to ask a question. I'd rather go somewhere where I can actually buy the product without having to ask any questions. And that's really what that comes down to. Yeah. So front, back, sides, up, top, bottom, any way you can to try and get the images in there to help someone make a purchasing decision.
Thank you. And I really like what you said there about answering questions. And I think if we were to look at every product's page with that in mind, does it answer all of the questions somebody might have about this product? Whether that's through the pictures, the image, well, presumably both. I think that's actually a really good place to start. So thank you. I think that's actually a really good question we can be asking ourselves. I mean,
Great.
that's great.
Mm.
And in terms of, you mentioned sort of how easy it is to buy, what do you wish more people understood about how customers actually behave when they land on a website? Because I'm assuming that in your experience, you've seen some websites perhaps don't behave as you expected, aren't that easy to check out. What do we need to know about customer behavior?
Customer behavior, gosh, yeah. Well, if they're visiting a site for the first time, of course, you've got seconds to. All right, the science will probably say fractions of seconds, but that a visitor gets a very, very quick feeling of whether they want to be on this website or not. And that is probably the most important thing to remember when you consider in your own purchasing, so your own purchasing of visiting sites. You're not around to waste time, and even if that time is a split second or a few seconds, knowing and getting that intuitive feeling, and it is often intuitive. Oh, I don't think this is really the kind of website I want to be on. Um, it's got to be considered from. A website has to be considered from the user's perspective. It's not about, well, it looks great for us, it looks fine for us, we've had no complaints. That's not the point. You need to understand what's happening with your visitor traffic. But if this is a new site, let's say, you don't have any idea what the user is going to be feeling, but you really should assume that you don't want to be wasting anyone's time. So anyone that comes on, they need to have delivery of information as quickly as possible. But a large proportion of those visitors may actually come to the website. If it's a new one, they'll come to it probably through promotion, let's say, and it will be promotion of the homepage probably. We've got a new website. But when it comes to product-based websites that are actually achieving a ranking or being returned in an AI result, let's say within a prompt. What you really need is the landing pages to actually be expressing, and this is expressing the detail. And this comes back to the last question, which is that if you've got a product-based website, and largely I think we're talking about product-based websites, how ensuring that every single product page is relevant to what is being returned, let's say, in results. So someone comes in from a search result to see a product. It could be a candle, let's say. That candle really should be fulfilling the objective of the search result. Of course, how do you know what the objective of the search result is? You can't second guess what every search result is. But what you would need to ensure is that the information that's within that product page is absolutely relevant to what is being displayed. Because otherwise you get this mismatch, and you get a mismatch, you get rejection. And if you get rejection, then you end up with a bounce, basically, or someone literally coming on and leaving within a split second. They won't hang around. They really won't. If that's it's almost, well, if that's the best that you can give me when I've searched for this and I've got that, what's the point in me being here? So yeah, I think that possibly answers it. But yeah, I think it's ensuring that you look at the website objectively and don't just accept it. Constantly look at it. Get people internally to look at it. People internally to feed back on it, and get other people to feed back on it as well. And it's not all about, we're not all running small businesses. Some of these businesses are very, very large, and they need to have external validation on things like that. And of course, the thing that you could do is you can go to a web company and say, how do you think my website looks? And of course, the web company will tell you it looks awful because they want another job. So be wary of that. Be wary of free assessments because they always end up with a recommendation of a new website. But yeah, I think what you've just got to do is you've got to keep being critical of what you're doing, how it looks, how it behaves, and try and view it as a visitor would. If you've got agents, if you sell through agents, then agents are a great place to go to talk to them. So if you've got field agents out there selling your products, then ask them what their honest appraisal is of the website and listen to what they say, because they're out there selling your products.
That's great advice. Thank you. So if a business comes to you and they say, my website isn't converting, what tends to be going on? What are some of the common reasons you see for that?
Well, I mean, it can be the things that we've just already spoken about. That is most often it. It can, just yesterday I was talking to someone within the industry who had been talking to an exhibitor at Top Drawer, and he said, I need to go and talk to this person. Now they're quite well known, but they've got a website that was built in 2015. And often, you can spot straight away immediately that there's an awful user experience there, and that user experience might have been fine back in 2015, but it certainly isn't these days. And so it can be quite quick. It can be quite a speedy, assessment, really. When you see something like that, you see something that's old, that really doesn't belong in today's web experience, and you can believe that web experience will not extend towards machine visitors as well. Those machine visitors are absolutely paramount. So I think a lot of it is you go on within a few minutes, you can start to pick up that there's information missing, that there's the design doesn't hold together, that it's clunky. These are things, because we view hundreds of websites and hundreds of layouts, and it's just unfortunately, it's a thing that comes with experience. You look at your own site and you kind of put up with it to a point at which you become bored often, and then it's time to change. And people often the boredom threshold for a business is a lot slower, funnily enough, than actually the process to realizing it's not working, because it's often things have gone downhill and we're not too sure why. Let's look at the website and then refresh it, because they think people are bored. But an awful lot of visitors won't have seen that website for ever before, might be visiting it for the first time. Are met not with boredom, but they're met with, well, this company hasn't really invested in its website, hasn't invested in its presentation, therefore I don't think I belong on here. So I would say, from my point of view, if a customer's coming to me, they're coming to me because they're either bored or things aren't working. And it doesn't often require me to go and say, well, here's the reasons it's not working, because they often know. Does that make sense? So I think
Yeah,
people
that does make sense.
innate sense that things aren't working. As much as you put a salesperson out on the road, you know within a few months that salesperson isn't working because there are no orders being generated. But with a website, people tend to give that a little bit longer because apparently they've invested way more than they would in a salesperson. But yeah, I think clients and would-be clients often know. They know way before they contact us that there's something not right with it, and they don't necessarily need us to assess. So I often just take it for granted that it's not that we're going to have to patch anything up on something that's old. It's actually taking a fresh look at it, and that is often the reality of it.
That makes sense. And when we're looking at a website, just so we're clear, so when we're thinking about the messaging, we're talking about the design, the functionality, do they all hold equal importance?
That's a really good question. I've not actually considered that question before, but they all have a place, um, and they all combine to make up a big picture. And if you imagine the biopsychology that we're faced with these days is so lightning fast. It's not. Oh, they're great. There's a 10% off offer going on. That doesn't mean anything to many people. And we have that shoved down our throats when we visit a website. Doesn't matter. You visit a website for the very first time, and within 3 seconds, there's a banner saying, "Give us your email address and get 10% off." We know we're going to be spammed after that. But I don't think that that might actually convince someone who is in the market and they're going to buy. They're there to buy. They're there to buy right now, and 10% actually is quite, is a fair offer, and they know that they can switch that marketing off, and they can do that without worry. Not like the old days where you could say you don't want any more marketing emails, but they'll continue to send them to you. But these days, there's a lot more control. So I think it's more careful than that. The consideration is the entire picture. I think actually a lot of people, a lot of websites, they make the mistake of throwing that banner in too early and throwing in messaging too early. It can often be more subtle than that. It can be at the product page, and it does take a little bit more work for a website manager to undertake that. But make it more tactical, make it more specific to a product at a set time. Don't just do it as a blanket thing because that's what everyone does, and maybe don't have it appearing quite so immediately. Allow someone to explore first, and then if they're on the website within, after a minute, let's say, then present them with the means to actually buy at a reduced rate. I just think it's often a bit lazy just to go and switch on a banner that says 10% off now. But that's just one aspect of it. But the messaging really, is just ensuring that it's consistent, that it's not overloading. It's there aren't too many words because people they often don't read. They're after something visual. They're not after something they have to read through. So keep things simple, keep things concise, ensure that things are spelled correctly and are grammatically correct and are punctuated correctly. Don't put some of that responsibility on your junior members of staff who might not have the same level of care and level of detail that you have. They might have more, though. They might have more than you. But yeah, I just think don't overload people and try and keep things fairly simplistic, because overloading people kind of is annoying. Yeah.
Thank you. So you mentioned earlier this brand that hadn't updated their website since 2015, which seems to me like quite a long time. Realistically, how often should a product business be reviewing their website or updating it? I guess that's two different things, because you probably need to review it more often than it actually needs an update. What are your thoughts on both of those?
Well, reviewing is constant. It's constant because you're going for feedback all the time. You shouldn't be just setting it up and letting it run. All right, let it run for the first few weeks, but ideally, what you need to be doing is monitoring traffic, seeing what's happening, and monitoring all the different levels, all the different rates, the bounce rates, the conversion rates, etc. How are you acquiring that traffic? Those kinds of they're all part of the whole thing, the part of the whole information mix. And of course, that means then periodically refreshing the content. And these days, platforms have they're often built on templates. They're customized templates. So I'm going to mention Shopify again, but Shopify has templates. You select the template and then you customize it to make it look like the brand, let's say, or to look like it's part of the stylistic integrity that's required for that brand. Holds it all together, but that then is subject to refinement. So you might get traffic, you might get comments from your visitors, or a visitor, or one of your staff that says this isn't working under these circumstances. So you're constantly checking, fixing, monitoring, and it becomes an iterative loop. I'm a big proponent of these, which is you can't do anything without monitoring its effects. Once you monitor its effects, you can then decide what you're going to do next, and then feed that back into the loop, and then keep iterating. And that iteration should be constant. It shouldn't be something that you iterate once a year. So I would say that when it comes to the platform should stand the test of time, and should be, let's say, behind the scenes updating. And the way of the world these days is, because things are moving so rapidly, because security is becoming so much of a concern for people. Pick a platform that's secure. Pick a platform that's going to be updated behind the scenes, and it isn't going to cost you for those updates necessarily. But then look at the front end, look at the template, and maybe periodically update that template if that template has an update that is worth updating to, if you see what I mean. So what can happen is you can have a template that you've customized, that you've built the business on, and then there's a second version of it, or a third version of it, that has a whole load of new features. And some of those new features might actually be features that you actually had as extras that you were paying for within another part of the website that you can dispense with, because the new features are part of the template. And so it's just a matter of just keeping your eye on that, because you're looking at security, you're looking at things like the user experience from the perspective of browser technology, and browser technology is always updating. We don't realize it behind the scenes. Well, we don't realize that it's going on behind the scenes often. But you come to a website and all of a sudden something looks a little bit out, and it can be that your browser has updated and it's rendered an object, let's say, on screen a little bit poorly, and that could be resolved by the person that owns the website just by updating to their latest template version, or it might need a fix. So you kind of have to have a mind on these things all the time. So it's go back to those reviews, those periodic reviews, and then maybe every couple of years just revitalize the front end, just to keep it up to date. And that's not because companies like us earn money out of it. Well, maybe if you're on one of the other platforms, you probably would cost you, but those kinds of costs are fairly minor, but they can polish you and keep you looking polished without too much additional cost. So the ongoing cost should not be something that should be particularly high. And if anyone out there is paying for a lot of Overwatch, as I call it, for some of the things I've said, then it might be time to start looking at an alternative platform, because these days, a lot of that old traditional stuff that used to go on with websites, like with hosting and separate SSL certificate, and technical Overwatch, and security Overwatch, often aren't so much needed, and they can be handled by the platform, because the platforms are so secure, or should be. And that's my view of it as a web company. And not, I'm not seeing that I don't see those costs as being something that are required so much these days, because they're handled by the platforms, or the platform, depending on which one you choose. Yeah.
That's really useful. Thank you. So for anyone who's on a budget, it sounds like they could, every couple of years, assuming there's no red flags or anything needs fixing with the website, they could simply do a refresh of the front-end
Yeah,
design.
just go for the next. Yeah,
And
just go for the next version
yeah,
of the template. If they go and switch to a new template, that's a bit different. But it's keeping the same template and then updating to the next version. Is relatively straightforward. Yeah. I mean, there are some whys and wherefores, or rather, the caveat to that, depending on how much customization was done first time round. But yeah, the theory behind it is actually that it shouldn't take too long to redo some of that customization once it's done. Yeah.
okay, well, that should be reassuring then. So you could
Mm.
refresh your website without spending too much time or money. So I think that's great to know. So if someone listening now is feeling a bit embarrassed by their current website because that happens. I'm sure you have people come to you and they know the website isn't quite right, and perhaps they keep avoiding it because sometimes it's easier not to tackle things. What would you want to say to them?
Yeah, it's quite a big thing to go and put your head above the parapet and go, we need to do something about it. We need to contact someone. And it is a bit nerve-wracking because you don't know what you're stepping into. But I think the most important thing is that you kind of have to go for people that you know. When I say that, it is better to go for people that you know. I don't just mean me here. Go to people who know the industry that you're in, who work with other people in the industry you're in. Go and talk to people who you are comfortable with, who are people like you, and ask them who they use. That is often a really good starting point. Don't be picking names out of Google, or even AI is only going to go and pull you a random bunch out, I would imagine, unless you're very specific, which you obviously can be these days. But look for a specialist in candles that will, a specialist web company that has developed websites that sell candles. That's a good starting point. But actually, that doesn't necessarily tell you what the people are like to work with. And the only way that you'll get that is if you talk to people in your sector who've worked with that. So if I just give you an example, the greeting card sector is a sector that we work particularly closely with, and into the giftware sector. And the greeting card sector, we are known for looking after people within that sector. And therefore our name gets passed around. That's quite important for those clients. It's great for us, obviously, because we've got a name there, but it's great for those clients because they know that they're coming to us recommended. So it means that they don't have to worry that we're going to charge them an arm and a leg. And we're not going to fulfill their requirements. And the reason for this as being a recommended route is because there's a guarantee to that. We're always mindful that when someone is recommended to us, that we have to look after the client, but we have to look after the person that recommended us. And what I mean is, I don't mean that we give them money. What I mean is, we give them the assurance that we're going to look after the person they've recommended. So looking after two people is quite a trick, to do that in a business relationship. You do not want that person to feel as though they're embarrassed because they recommended that business to you and you let them down. That would be, to me, that would be unforgivable. Yeah. So allow
Thank you.
a web company to basically make its own reputation is the most important thing to go for. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Simon. That's really honest and helpful advice. Thank you. And speaking of advice, I have one more question for you, which is one I always end on, well, a variation of this. What would your number one piece of advice be for anyone who wants to make a bit more of their website this year?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, AI is a hot topic. And it's a hot topic because it's here and it's not going to go away. And it's only going to become more and more entangled and entwined within our lives, whether we like it or not. And I think the biggest step that you can make is to ensure that your website is able to communicate what's called machine to machine. So the content within your website is all sat on a machine, basically, at a platform end. And that data needs to be machine readable by another remote machine. And what that allows for then is the onset of agentic, what's called agentic commerce, an agentic process, which is where that machine that you've trusted to become your AI agent is going off and finding you a product or a service and is returning you a set of information and a set of examples and or recommendations based upon what prompts you've put in. Now, ultimately, that agentic relationship and that process is going to become something that turns into an automatic fulfillment. That is an automatic purchase. So ultimately, within the next couple of years, you're likely to see orders coming in that have been placed through a chatbot, through the basic ChatGPT and others, where a researcher, that is a person, has put in a prompt, find me, I'm going to come back to candles again, find me some candles that are flavoured and have a perfume smell, smelling like roses. And I'd like 4 in a box, and I'd like them to be UK based, and I'd like free delivery. And those robots will go off, search the products, give you a selection of those products, and then ask you if you would like to buy any of them. You are then giving authority to buy. Now, you don't have to worry about that yourself, but your customers will be concerned about that, and they'll be looking for the novelty at first. Oh my goodness, I can buy through my GPT. But ultimately, that's going to start to become much more habitual. And that is agentic commerce is predicted to account for about 50% of all transactions by 2030. So if you can get that right now, you've done a lot of the hard work. But it does depend on the platforms. So you need to be careful. So if you've got an old website, that will probably not be able to be machine readable and won't allow for that interrogation to occur. And also probably not the transactional side of things. So it's a good idea to keep up with technology, and that is probably the biggest step in technology that we've seen for a generation, maybe. In terms of time that the internet's been around, it's huge. Yeah, so
Wow, thank you.
machine to machine, and ask yourself if your website can do that, and if it can't, then talk to someone who can assist with that.
Thank you. I really didn't think you were going to say that, because Simon, did not know that was a thing. I genuinely,
Really?
don't get me wrong, I've used GPTs to compare, if I'm looking for a product, I wanted a pad to go onto my treadmill, like a walking pad, for example. And I did go to ChatGPT and say, these are my requirements. And it came up with a short list. It did a nice comparison table. But we're not yet at that stage, are we, where it can then go ahead and buy it for you? But that is coming, is it?
Well, and by demonstration, I've done this with products and I've done this with holidays, and you get a fantastic set of results back, and in that it will also say, I can't buy this for you, but here's where you can get it from. But it says I can't buy it for you yet, but we know it's coming because AP2 is along the way, which is Agentic Protocol 2, which basically the all the payment systems, card processing systems are all geared up and ready for it. Shopify is ready for it. Shopify Agentic is actually part and parcel of its system. It's built into its platform. And so it's ultimately what it comes down to is it's legislation, it's legislative, that is where the furlong, the final furlong is really for it to start operating. And it's predicted to start operating as a thing by the end of 2026. And it will start to wind up. So it won't be everywhere. It'll be in some places first, some platforms at first, and then people will gradually get used to it. But when I first heard about it, which was back in about July, it blew my mind. I thought, no, people can't do that. Surely not. But as I've read more into it and I've understood it and I've understood the importance of it, you will ultimately be able to do things like scheduling purchases, so that if it knows that you buy a greeting card for your mum's birthday every year on a certain date, it can go off and buy that for you and send that to you so that you can then do the rest of it. The automatic card companies like Funky Pigeon, those actually will send your card directly on, but their system, I believe, will ultimately carry that agentic process as well. Or if it doesn't, it should do. But ultimately, it is the ability to make your life simpler. That's really where this AI
Wow.
is evolving. It's not designed to make life more complicated. It's designed to make it more simple. And the
And I'm
complex,
assuming,
the adopting of it. Once
yeah, but I can see opportunities here. So I'm assuming you could look at something on a website and you could say, please buy this for me on payday, for
yeah,
example, because you
yes,
could think, oh, I haven't got the money now. I don't
yeah,
want to forget about this. So I
that's
can see,
absolutely
yeah,
right.
and I can see that for product businesses, if your website is set up that you can take advantage of this, I can definitely see the advantages, because I think, and I don't know how, but I'm thinking that logically there will be a difference between a person reviewing your website and a bot reviewing your website. Of course, your website needs to do both, because there'll still be a lot of people who will be coming to your website. So that has definitely given all of us, I think, a lot to think about, Simon. Wow, I can't believe this was a fantastic episode. And this last few minutes have actually, everything's been really useful, but the last few minutes have genuinely blown my mind. I had no idea this was
Oh, it's
coming.
interesting.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, really interesting. And
yeah.
perhaps I'll have to get you on again in another year when this is all up and running. And because I think there will be
The
some
world will be
changes
a
in how
different
we need
place
to.
by then.
Yeah, and I genuinely think, as I was saying, there will be some changes in how we all need to think about our websites, given that, you know,
Yeah, I
bots will
think
be looking at them more.
the fundamentals remain the same, but it's just what's going on around it. The fundamentals have always been presentation and information and that kind of thing, and making sure things are up to date. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like your shop window. You would never have a shop window that stands the same year in, year out. Anyone that does that is going to have a shop that's not particularly successful. But yeah, it's the things that are going on around that are very helpful and useful. And some of the platforms have AI built in, for example, already, so that, it can help you write some of your content, which is something I was going to say before. But anyway, I could talk about this all day, is the truth of it. So if anyone does want to, just wants to have just a natter about it, I'm more than happy just to talk.
That's brilliant, Simon.
Mm.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to put all the links where people can find you, contact you, talk to you
Great.
about AI in the show notes for this episode. And thank you so much again for all you've shared. And yeah, I genuinely might take you up on coming back at a later date to talk about this in more
Absolutely.
detail, because I think
Yeah,
we've just scratched the surface, haven't
I
we?
think so. Yeah. Pleasure.
Thank you ever so
Thanks
much,
for inviting
Simon.
me on.
Thank you so much for listening right to the end of this episode. Do remember that you can get the full back catalogue and lots of free resources on my website, vickyweinberg.com. Please do remember to rate and review this episode if you've enjoyed it, and also share it with a friend who you think might find it useful. Thank you again, and see you next week.